Hey folks, this is the LG G6 and I've had it for a while. You know I've reviewed it already. If you go to chipchick.com, like a computer chip and a little baby chicken.com, chipchick.com, check out my review of the G6 where I'll be telling you all about it. But if you don't like reading 2,000 words and you want the video version, let's spend 10 minutes together where I can show you here in person what I like and don't like about this phone. I'll be honest, this is one of my favorites so far. Now, I also have the Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus, but at the time I did the review for ChipChick, those were not available yet. So now I'm not going to compare it to the Galaxy S8 or anything because this is just purely a G6 review on its own merits. The first thing that'll strike you, I think, and I need to bring this up, it's the elephant in the room, is how much of a difference this aspect ratio makes. This is my Pixel XL 5.5-inch phone, and here's the LG G6 with a 5.7-inch phone. And as you can see, it's a little dim, so let me crank it up a little more. But as you can see, this is amazing. I mean, this is what this 2:1 aspect ratio with 18:9, whatever they call it, gives you, is the ability to have a large screen in a small device, you know? Let me just tip them over so you can see what I'm talking about. You know, this is a bigger phone. It's about the same thickness, maybe a little thicker, but you're getting a phone that gives you an amazingly big display and a much smaller form factor. And that's what's exciting about the G6. So enough of the Pixel. Let's talk about this phone. This phone is one of my favorites this year. LG is back. As you know, the G5 last year was a miss for me. Sorry for bumping the tripod there. But it was a miss. I was expecting LG to give us something substantial, something like this, something that had a metal and glass build, or at least a full metal build with, you know, aluminum unibody machine chassis and built-in antenna bands. Instead, what they gave us is a metal phone, supposedly, but that was painted with automotive-grade paint, which is not a bad thing per se, but just missed the mark. And because of the modularity, the fit and finish just didn't feel like premium and flagship worthy, especially when we've seen what Apple and Samsung can do. Now that Samsung is actually in the game and making beautiful phones that are out of great materials, it was time for LG to follow suit, and this phone finally remedies all that. Not only does it give you current specs, and not only does it give you, you know, this amazingly large display and small bezel in a small compact phone. I mean, look at this. Look at how easy it is to hold a 5.7-inch phone with this display size. I don't have huge hands. They're not small either, but, you know, I can like reach stuff. I can go up here and have no issues with things. It's truly a remarkable experience, and it feels so great in hand because if you look at it, it's slightly rounded here on both edges. So the rear is glass. So get this is weird. The rear is Gorilla Glass 5 and it's slightly curved, 2.5D. The camera pod is glass and it's Gorilla Glass 4. And then the front is Gorilla Glass 3. And I think the reason for that is different thicknesses and different costs, obviously. But the front is perfectly flat. You can see that. There might be a little bit of an edge here, but no, it's actually not. There's a chamfer. It's perfectly flat. So that gives you the feel for it. Now, I'm running the default launcher here, the LG one, so you have an idea of what it looks like. It ticks up the full screen. If I switch to Google Now Launcher, you get a little bit of a bar where the software buttons are, which kind of defeats the point of these beautiful rounded corners. And I said this in my ChipChick review, and I really mean it. I think this is a great design detail, and it reminds me of the LG Arena, which didn't have rounded corners on the screen but had a very similar look and feel. Check out my review again for a link to the LG Arena, or Google LG Arena. I think it was a K900 was the model number. It's that 2008 dumb phone from LG. This is gorgeous. I mean, look at it. This is beautiful. And yes, granted, the Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus are beautiful too, but it's a different kind of beautiful. This is kind of like understated, really well made beautiful. So obviously I've gone on and fawned about the design because I think this is finally a return for LG. You know, glass and metal phones are the way to go. This is water resistant and dust resistant. It's IP68, which means you can put it underwater. You don't have to worry about everyday life. And yes, you don't have a removable battery because of it, of course. You know, but that's part of the course today for a flagship. I think that's okay. That's why we have the LG V20 for removable cover in the back and for a removable battery. So what's the screen resolution? Well, it's a bit odd. It's 1440 wide, but it's bigger than the usual 2560. I can't remember the exact number, but it's an 18:9 ratio, so 2:1. So it's 1440 times 2, which is 2880, I guess. 2880 by 1440 with rounded corners. It's an IPS panel, so no daydream here, but it is, is it ever an IPS panel? I mean, look at this screen. Look at it. Just look at the colors on this screen. Let me bring up the app tray. Oops, I started the camera, which is totally not what I wanted. But let's look at this for a second. Look at that Flipboard logo. You know, look at the Google icons. Everybody's really familiar. I mean, this thing is gorgeous. Unreal, this screen, okay? So there is the screen, there is the design. Let's walk you through some of the other bits and pieces on this phone. So you've got headphone jack at the top. Yes, headphone jack, you heard that. I'm so glad that Samsung hasn't dropped the headphone jack and that LG hasn't dropped the headphone jack. And HTC, you better put the headphone jacks back on your phones. You were one of the best for headphone audio, and then you remove the headphone jack from the Bolt and from the U Ultra. I'm disappointed. Secondary mic. You can see I have a tiny scratch here. Oh no, it's just dirt. The embedded antennas are really smooth. Like, you can't feel them at all. The left-hand side has the volume rocker. Look at how beautiful that is. And then you go down to the bottom where you have the primary mic here, and then USB Type-C, as it should be. A mono speaker, which sounds okay. It's loud enough, and it's not going to win any awards. But remember, if you're listening to music or videos or playing games on your phone with the built-in mono speaker, I think you're a bit of a jerk because you're being rude to everyone else, especially in public transit and stuff. So get some really good headphones and call it a day, okay? Like, it's really not important. Speakers should really only matter for one thing, and that's making phone calls, okay? It's nice to have a speaker that sounds better. It's a nice perk, but frankly, it's not a deal breaker to me. There is a 5-megapixel wide-angle front-facing camera and a proximity sensor, and a earpiece. Now, by the way, I just want to point out, this is a very unique model that I have here. It's a gold and white, which is freaking beautiful. Gold and white unit. You can see the gold around the fingerprint reader here. This thing is dope looking. Unfortunately, it'll never make it to the US. This is a US model, but it's a one-off, international in the sense that it's unlocked. So it's not an international model because it does have wireless charging, which is US only. It has US bands, but it's basically a review unit. It's basically a one-off for reviewers, unlocked. It was a prototype pre-release. We got it at Mobile Congress. I also have somewhere in a box over here a US branded, carrier branded device, and I hate carrier devices, so I'm not even pull it out of the box. I don't care at this point. So gold, the US versions come as a black and a silver one, and the silver is slightly bluish, which is kind of cool. I have some notifications, so I'm going to get rid of that. So this gold and white is only going to make it to some parts of Asia, I believe. So if you want a gold and white, you can import it, but you won't get wireless charging because it's US only wireless charging. By the way, it has quick charge 3.0 for quick charging as well. So you have wireless charging, quick charge 3.0, water resistance, large, beautiful screen with awesome aspect ratio, really beautiful manufacturing and detail. I didn't show this side, which is where the SIM tray holder is. So it's a SIM tray, single SIM, nano SIM with a micro SD card in here, up to 256 gigabyte expansion. Now, something worth noting that is a bit vexing to me, that the US versions of this phone only include 32 gigs of storage, which is borderline minimal these days. You can get a 64 gig version of this phone, but only in some parts of Asia. So you will probably need a micro SD card to make this phone worth your while. Just be aware of that. It's not the end of the world, okay? It's just something to know. So in the back, fingerprint reader, which is also the power lock key. So you push it, it goes black. You push it again, it unlocks and brings you right back. That's a bit weird. I'd like to have a dedicated power lock key. Now that LG has given up on having all the buttons in the back, I think this should be back on this side here or something. And then, of course, I haven't talked about the camera yet, except for the front facing, which, by the way, is a bit of a downgrade from last year at 5 megapixel instead of 8. But it's fine. It's not going to win any awards. It's perfectly fine for a flagship today. Nothing too crazy. Certainly not as good as the Galaxy S8's 8 megapixel autofocus or, like what we have on the Pixel. But it'll do. It'll do. The back camera is really what I want to talk about, because this camera, let me tell you about this camera. Okay, I'll just put it out there and I put this in my review. This can compete with the Pixel, no problems, which is, as you know, a tough bar to meet. And I'm very excited to see what the Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus are kind of going to be able to do. I have them. I'm going to be reviewing them from ChipChick very shortly. But right now I haven't had any seat time with them, so I don't want to judge anything. And again, this is not comparing the G6 to the Galaxy S8. This is a G6 review in its own sake. So this camera is bonkers good, okay? 13 megapixel, dual 13 megapixel. I don't know which one the wide angle. I think this is the wide angle here. And then this is the regular angle. And then there's a dual LED, not dual color, dual LED flash. Notice one thing is gone this year is laser autofocus. But they don't need it. This has phase detection autofocus, of course, only on the main camera. The wide-angle camera never had on the G5 and the V20 never had autofocus, but it has phase detect and it's just fast. There's no problems with it whatsoever. 13 megapixel phase detect autofocus OIS on the main camera. The second one has no autofocus, as you know. It's a wide angle, but does not have OIS anymore. Now the G5 and the V20 had OIS on the wide angle, and you know what? That's a bit of a disappointment. I think they had to do it for size. Look at how thin this phone is. And it's not protruding. In fact, this camera mod is slightly recessed by like 1/4 of a millimeter, so you won't scratch the glass. And that's a good thing, because on the G5, that glass would get scratched all the time. And so you lose the OIS on the wide angle, which means in low light, you really have to worry about being steady. And that's a drawback. But you gain megapixels. This camera on the G5 and V20 is only 8 megapixels, so 13 now. Now you're going to say, but you lose resolution on the main camera because it's gone down from 16 to 13. Well, let me talk about that in a moment. The other thing I wanted to point out is that just like the V20 and the G5, this main camera has an f/1.8 stop, which is pretty damn awesome. And this one I think is f/2.4 or 2.2, but it's not that great. It hasn't really improved since last year. This is, though, the one to talk about, because combining a large aperture with OIS with typically large pixels makes a huge difference. We've seen that on the Galaxy S7, the Galaxy S8 now. The Pixel lacks OIS, but does some tricky stuff in software to get you there. But I think the Pixel is really the camera that's optimized for like iPhone type users. You know, like you hit auto mode and everything is awesome. This does really good in auto mode. It's really fast, but this has all kinds of manual controls and great things that do great, wonderful things. And so let me talk about the sensors, because the one thing that surprised me and kind of disappointed me is that they didn't go to large sensors for this camera array. So they stayed with 1.13 micron pixels. And that's the thing that LG seems to know how to do. They seem to know how to take advantage of those small size pixels and get the best low light performance out of them. Their algorithms are really good. So this thing is a low light champ despite not having 1.4 micron pixels like the S8 and S7, and despite not having 1.5 micron pixels, I believe, like the Pixel and the HTC 10. So this is exciting that it has these small pixels, but really great camera performance. Now, inside of this beast, now I've talked camera, I'm going to show you some photos in a second, but inside of this beast is Snapdragon 821. And that's a fantastic processor. It's on the Pixel, the Le Eco Le Pro 3, a bunch of other phones. You can't really complain about it, the U Ultra from HTC. You can't complain about this processor. It's not the latest, like a 835, but you know what? You're perfectly covered. 4 gigs of RAM, and as I said, 32 gigs of built-in storage, 64 in some countries, but in the US we get 32. So Snapdragon 821, super fast, super snappy, super responsive. This is the the tray from LG. There's an app tray version. So here's the web. Let's start some apps. Here's the camera. Let's start. Let's see, messaging. Let's start Google Plus, wherever that went, somewhere in here. There it is. So anyway, now we've got a bunch of apps open. You can have a look and see what's going on here. Okay, so it's nice and fast and responsive. Everything is smooth. You can kill apps really quickly. I mean, look, it's Snapdragon 821. Like, you can't go wrong with this. It's good stuff. So no complaints about the innards. It's I don't think LG could go with this 835 simply because they don't have the exclusive first access. Samsung manufactures the 835 for Qualcomm, so they could access it in large quantities, and that's what happened here. So good specs, even not if they're not outstanding in the latest state of the art, they're fantastic solid specs. Great screen, great design, great camera, water resistance, all the things you need. This is a fantastic phone all around. I love this phone, and I love the size for the screen size, the way it feels in hand. I think LG is back in a major way. Now, there are a few things that are a bummer. No notification light that I'm aware of, which I haven't seen, and I'm kind of bumsy because I like that. Wireless charging is US only, 32 gig only in the US for storage. And then the final one is the quad hi-fi DAC. Now, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but if you read my V20 review on ChipCheck, you know that I fawned upon the audio quality of the V20, and it is the best sounding phone. It's better even than the HTC10 with headphones, okay, with wired headphones. And the reason for that is it's got this amazing audio chip system. It's basically a DAC and a headphone amp combined in one, and it's absolutely the best in the world. It's made by ESS, and there are versions of the G6 in the universe out there, I think in Korea, that have that DAC built in, but this US one does not have that. It has a standard headphone jack with the DAC from the Snapdragon 821, which is a really good one, by the way. It's perfectly good. You can drive weird headphones like Beyerdynamic DT990 Pros, which are my go-to, but it's not quite as good and quite as loud, say, as the ESS DAC on the V20. So these are some of the drawbacks. Everything else I love about this phone. It's nice, it's fast, it's beautiful. The skin, as you can see, is pretty lightweight. I've kind of cleaned it up best I can here. I don't like too much stuff on my home screen. There's a version with a drawer and a version without the drawer, which is really kind of nice. And then there's some really cool settings, like the settings you can set to alphabetic like this, or tab view like this. I prefer the kind of like alphabetic list view, not alphabetic, I mean list view. And then there are other cool things, like you can see this font. I love this font. It's let's see, I have it in here somewhere. So it's called the LG Smart Font, and it's slightly different than Roboto, as you can see. And you can set that up, and it gives you that feel of really having an LG phone versus having like a Pixel, which is kind of cool. Now, I'm running mostly with the Google Now Launcher, but I do run it with this font because I like it. And, the skin stays out of your way. As you can see, everything is pretty much, very Android 7. This is, by the way, 7, not 7.1. And, as you see, the settings, everything, I don't know why it's not reacting to my finger there. I guess I'm not tapping it. But everything is exactly as you'd expect Android to look like. There's very little customization, and that makes me very, very happy. Now, of course, buying this, you're not necessarily going to get the updates as fast as you would with the Pixel. So the Pixel still has its purpose in the universe, but I really hope the next generation Pixel, like the Galaxy S8 now, is a widescreen. This is the way to go. All phones have to go that way. Very little bezel, widescreen, and I mean by widescreen, I mean double aspect ratio screen, like 18:9, 2:1, because that's the future. And I really think once you've touched that, there's no going back. You're never going to go back. Like, to me, this is what I want every day in my pocket, but I want this as a Pixel. And dual camera, you know, this wide angle is so much fun. You can take photos you could never dream of taking without the wide angle. And I think that's the big lack on the Galaxy S8. I'm sure the camera will be phenomenal, but it'll never have that kind of flexibility. Of all the setups I've used, short of the P10 and P10 Plus, the Huawei setup, which I think is really phenomenal with a monochrome and a color camera, one dedicated to capturing light, the other one dedicated to capturing color, I think this is the best setup you can get for dual camera. Having that zoom thing that the iPhone 7 Plus is doing is really useless. You really need a wide angle lens. It makes life in photography so much more fun and creative. Kudos. So let's look at some photos. I got some photos here. Some of them are made directly with the camera. Some of them have been tweaked with Snapseed, but let's bear with me here as I find my photos. 1 second. So device folders. So here we are. I seem to have a series of black photos here, but look at these photos, okay? So this is straight out of the camera. This is a sunset, and this is a wide angle of the same shot. So this is narrow angle, this is wide angle. This is another wide angle shot. I mean, they're incredible photos. Look at this low light shot. You know, these you'll see most of these on my ChipChick review. So by the way, this is wide angle versus narrow angle. Same shot, narrow angle, wide angle. All of these are on my review. They look fantastic. I mean, I cannot tell you how good these look. This camera just nails it every time. This is all out in Idaho in the snow. Double rainbow. I couldn't have captured that without the wide angle. Look at that. That's a mural in Austin, Texas. You can see the texture of the wall. It's so good. Let's see. This is a wide angle shot from the roof of the convention center in Austin when I was there for South by. Low light shot. So now this is a low light shot on stage, zoomed in. And look at, even zoomed in, how much detail we're getting on these people. Now this is low light. This is, you know, really hard also to balance this neon sign with the people on stage. Again, another low light shot that is spectacular. I mean, look at the detail. And you can see a bit of motion blur because these guys were playing music, so they were moving a little bit. But, I mean, wow, right? So there we go. Let's show you some more. This is a wide angle shot of the same scene. So we see narrow angle, wide angle. You can capture so much more. Some video. Another wide angle shot. I was walking right next to the car. I could not have captured that shot without a wide angle lens. There was no way to pull back. So, you know, low light neon. I mean, look at this photo. Look at the level of detail in this photo. You can read the license plate. You can see all the detail on that building. The moon. I mean, this thing is just really good. That's all there is to it. So, and this is a little selfie well, it was a rear camera selfie of myself. So that shows you some stuff. And then, you know, I play with Snapseed a lot. And so I got a lot of really great Snapseed shots here that I played with. Of course, these are emphasized and modified. I mean, look at this one. I just mean the highlights come out a little bit more, but there's so much dynamic range on this camera. So I could go on, but you get the feel for it. This is a phenomenal phone. Get it. If you don't want to spend $700 on a phone, this is $650. It's a little cheaper than most flagships, and honestly, you get a rockstar phone for the money. So I highly recommend it. This video is way too long, but hey, you know, I'm into doing long videos. Maybe I should just do long videos. Every time I try to do a 10-minute video, you guys yell at me because it's not good enough. So that's my G6 review in a nutshell. Love it. By the way, the battery is a 3,300 milliamp hour battery, and it lasts a whole day, no problems. The Snapdragon 821 is very efficient, so no issues there. I like this phone a lot. Stay tuned for my, go read my review on ChipChick.com, ChipChick.com, and stay tuned for my S8 and GS8 and GS8 Plus reviews soon. And then another thing is you need to follow me on Twitter if you don't already. TNKGRL, TNKGRL, like tanker or without the vowel. That's my Twitter handle. That's where all the announcements are going to be happening about what I'm doing. I've got a podcast coming up on a major podcast network. The podcast is back. It'll be weekly. It'll be audio. You'll be able to subscribe again. Tune into my Twitter to find out more. Like this video. Tell your friends. Subscribe to my channel. I will be signing out now with my G6 review. All right, guys. Laters. Cheers.